Hi, and welcome back to the Britt Mayer Show. In today's episode, we are diving into the uphill battle faced by California's cattle ranchers under a wave of progressive regulations. You guys are going to love our guest. Allison Fender from Flying F Ranch in St. Isabel is a passionate rancher and a member of the California Cattlemen's Association. Allison's journey into being a true cowgirl in California began with a remarkable wedding gift from her parents, 10 bred heifers. And this sparked her and her husband's dream of building a sustainable beef operation in California. Her story is a testament to the grit and the heart of California's ranching families who have been shaping the state's landscape for over 500 years. Cattle ranching in California traces back to the Spanish missions of the 1700s, when missionaries and soldiers introduced livestock, laying the foundation for a vibrant industry in California. Today, California's 38 million acres of rangeland, stretching from deserts to intermountain pastures, are managed by ranchers like Allison, who balance livestock production with wildlife conservation. These multi-generational operations, many spanning 4 or more generations, are not just businesses, but cultural legacies that feed communities and preserve open spaces. Yet, ranchers in California face mounting pressures from regulations like water restrictions, methane mandates, we're going to talk all about that, and animal welfare laws, driving up costs and threatening the beef on our tables. Join us as Allison shares how these challenges impact her ranch and why they matter to consumers and what it takes to keep California's ranching heritage alive. And we're going to answer one of the burning questions that you had about those mRNA injections and our beef in America. Let's get started. Hey mamas, I'm Britt. I'm a Christian mom and a journalist, and I am busy, especially during the summer. I'm always chasing wellness for me and for my family, and that's why I don't gatekeep. I want to actually share with you what works. Since summer is so busy, I rely on We Heart Nutrition's omega-3 to keep my heart, my brain, and my mood strong. And I truly love this product. From wild caught anchovy, sardine, and mackerel, there's no fishy aftertaste because they put this great lemon essence in it. Now, you know I'm all about the research, and the research shows omega-3s cut triglyceride levels by up to 30% and reduce heart disease risk, which is really vital for women who juggle stress. A 2019 study found that 1 gram daily lowers heart attack risk by 9%. And for us moms, DHA supports brain health. It eases brain fog, while EPA fights inflammation, and that helps with mood swings or joint pain. And studies also suggest that omega-3s may lower the breast cancer risk, which is awesome. We Heart Nutrition donates 10% of sales to pro-life pregnancy centers, which aligns with my values, so you can add their omega-3s to your routine, knowing that you're supporting a company that aligns with your values and doesn't fight against it. Head to weheartnutrition.com and use code ROOTEDWINGS for a discount to keep you thriving. That's weheartnutrition.com, code ROOTEDWINGS. Allison, thank you so much for sitting down and joining us to talk about California ranching, which is something I was telling you in the green room that it's been put on my radar because of everything that's going on up in Northern California. And we're seeing just what has been labeled a lot of government overreach coming for the farmers out in beautiful, beautiful Marin County, which I used to love when I was younger. And it's just so sad to see all this. So I was like, you know what? It's time to have a California rancher, a California cowgirl come and sit down and share like what is really going on, because it does affect us in California. So let's start with the crazy gift. I have it here in my notes. You got a remarkable wedding gift from your parents. Your wedding, 10 bred heifers. What? That's not the typical. Tell me about this wedding gift that you got and how this set you into motion for becoming a California cowgirl.
Yeah, of course. So, um, well, first of all, just like kind of going through a little bit of cattle terminology, a heifer is a young female cow that has not had a calf yet. So, my dad gifted my husband and I 10 bred heifers. So, they were pregnant mama cows. And that was kind of the start of Flying F Ranch. So, on online, I'm known as Flying F Ranch. This is actually just my business name. It's not really the actual location, if that makes sense. What started everything here in Southern California is really Mesa Chiquita Ranch and the San Isabel ranches. My family had immigrated over here in 1921 to essentially start helping out on the dairy side of things. And then it kind of transitioned into the beef operation side, which is what I do today with my husband. And those 10 heifers kind of created a new avenue for my husband and I, Bryce, to do something that's of our own. So we decided to look into direct to consumer marketing. And we even looked into doing more registered Black Angus genetics and kind of like diving into a little bit more like sciencey kind of based stuff when it comes to cattle production and how we can make things more efficient and just better quality overall. And basically, we just serve Southern California at the moment. We're a very small scale operation in comparison to others, especially in California. But yeah, we love what we do. And that's kind of like the direction we're going in right now. It's an ever evolving thing that we're always trying to see what works best for us in the time being. But it's been a fun journey so far.
So how long have you been doing this then? Like total years, what's your experience?
So we got married in 2014. And that's when we got those 10 heifers. When we really dove into the direct to consumer kind of side, it was in 2019, just before COVID hit. So it just kind of like
Oh,
exploded from there. It was
yeah.
kind of like a good time to get started, I guess. But we originally started because we wanted to raise our own meat for our own family that we felt was healthy and nutritious. And then, word kind of spreads from there. And all of a sudden I have friends and family and neighbors that want some beef as well. So we just started developing our own, a couple head of cattle a year to just market locally. And then from there, we just kind of saw a need that a lot of locals wanted to know where their food came from. So it kind of spiraled from there. So 2020 is kind of like when we really first started marketing to the community, other than just family and friends and people we knew. And then just last year was our first year to do USDA retail cuts of beef, which essentially means I'm able to sell just cuts of like a couple steaks to you or a couple 100 pounds of beef. Whereas in 2020, and even we still do it now, we mostly did whole and half shares of beef, which would require everyone to have like a large deep freezer
Right.
or the capacity to hold that much beef or share among their friends and family too. So it's two kind of like different options, I guess, that we offer. Obviously, on a bulk standpoint, it's a lot more economically friendly for families that really enjoy eating beef. But, I also saw some opportunity in creating some sort of avenue for like older couples or single people that live in San Diego that live in a condo on the beach that still want to purchase our beef, but it's a little bit more expensive, obviously. And we can get into that a little bit later too.
Yeah, I will get into the expense. What I love about ranching, especially ranching in California, because we have such a heritage of ranchers in California. I was looking at how this goes back, like cattle ranching in California traces back to the Spanish missions of the 1700s when missionaries and soldiers, they introduced livestock and laid the foundation. So this is California. You are the heritage of the legacy of what California has been for a very, very long time. And it does reflect that like independent spirit and self-reliance that California was, and now we're seeing a lot of government control really start to creep in, and it has been for a while, but we're seeing it kind of exploding right now. And it's unfortunate because it's affecting ranching, and then that affects us as consumers and cost. So let's go into a little bit of these piling on regulations and what you've experienced, from your perspective, because we from the outside can hear about it from the men in shiny suits, but you
Mm-hmm.
guys are the ones in the cowboy hats on the ranch actually feeling it. So water restrictions, methane rules, what is hitting you guys over at Flying F Ranch the hardest?
So for the ranch or for our business personally, some of the things that come to mind that are a problem or have been a problem in the past would be estate taxes, which is also known as the death tax. As far as I know, in California, it's not a California tax thing, but it's more like a federal thing. So no matter where you live in the United States, it's going to affect you, especially large landowners. So for example, like I think what it is right now is the land, if it's worth more than $15.6 million, 40% of that would be taxable at the end of somebody's lifetime. So it can be a really big deal. It can make ranches obviously have to be sold off to be able to pay those taxes. So that's something to kind of keep a pulse on. I know that there's some exemptions for cattle ranchers or farmers and things of that nature. But it's just like one of those things that my grandpa always used to say, like, we're land rich, but we're money poor. So it's like, you kind of have to, do what's best to like kind of keep as much as you can, but you're kind of at the mercy of what the federal government is expecting of you and things like that.
40% seems so insane that
Yes.
that you would owe 40% at the end of its lifetime. Like, how is that even possible?
It's
How does
not.
that work?
That's why it's not. So that's why you have to sell off. And that's why that's another reason why like cattle prices are really high too, because, we have to sell off some land in order to survive. And then all of a sudden, that gets developed, or who knows what happens to it. Obviously, maybe not, cattle might not be staying there anymore. So, things just kind of like shift and change. So that can be something that can be a big deal, especially in the future. Fortunately, some ranches have some exemptions on it, or you can bypass it if you're smart about it and are early enough on it. Like some things to keep in mind is like having a good trust and an attorney that can kind of keep that trust up to date. There's gifting options. There are ways to kind of put your company under an LLC instead of like owning it and having it under your name. Those are just like a few examples. There's also conservation easements that you can get involved with, and California Rangeland Trust works closely with California cattlemen's, and it helps a lot of ranchers keep land in the cattle kind of community if things like this kind of happen. So there's ways to get around it, but it can be difficult, and who knows what happens when administrations change, or you're kind of at the mercy of like when you die and who's in charge when you die, which is really sad, but that's just kind of like
that's not a very good outlook. That's a big gamble.
It's not.
What about methane? We hear a lot about the cow farts are going to kill us, and so now there's like all these regulations on, I think even down to like what you have to feed your cow so that they're not polluting the air. What's going on with cow farts, and how does that affect you and ranchers in California?
It's cow farts and burps, just to clarify, I guess.
Okay. Good to know. I'll add that to my notes.
But I think it's more funny to talk about cow farts, so I think that's why it gets a lot of buzz. But in California, I mean, I think we are the number one state for dairy production. So we have a lot of dairies, especially in the Central Valley. What's really cool about ranchers and farmers is we're really innovative, and we're always trying to progress and try to like figure out ways how we can help in make things a lot easier for the whole entire community. So, for example, I've been really fortunate to be able to visit a lot of these dairies and feedlots and big processing plants and things like that to kind of see exactly what we do as producers. So I went to a few dairies actually back in February, and there's some dairies that use these big methane bubbles that capture cow burps and farts and all those things. And they're able to regenerate that energy and make it into fuel to generate
they catch cow farts. Wait.
They do. It's literally like a big bubble that they catch all this stuff in.
Okay.
Don't ask me how. I don't know how, but I've seen it. And there's like big bubbles that it's like big like tarps basically, and they capture the methane, they distribute it somehow, like get it out, and then they can monitor, or they can fuel different equipment around the operation. And I don't know, I guess I'm not the expert on the methane stuff, but there's ways that ranchers and farmers are trying to do good with what we have, and using science and different like methods on how to combat that a little bit. But I think like what's something important to remember is methane is a renewable gas. It's not like comparing it's like comparing apples to oranges when it comes to like CO2 emissions, when we have private jets flying around, and then we have cows that are eating grasses, they poop, they, burp, they do what normal animals or anything that's living do. It goes in the atmosphere, but it's only in the atmosphere for about like 10 years. And then it's regenerated back into the soil through carbon sequestration. So it's a more natural kind of cycle. Whereas a CO2 emission standpoint, that stuff stays in the air for like thousands of years, and before we see any sort of regeneration of it, I guess. So I think what's important to remember is methane isn't really a terrible thing when you really look into it. It's a natural process. And but we are doing the best we can as producers to be innovative and kind of like use this problem and turn it into a solution for long-term goals.
Sure. Or the problem that they say is a problem that,
Correct.
I would love to go back to the 1700s and ask those ranchers if cow farts were a real
Oh
problem.
yeah.
Okay, let's talk
Same.
about some of the water restrictions, because that is something I think anyone in California knows. We all have those stupid dials on our dishwashers, on our showers, that makes it so that it's basically a drip. We can't we can't even have real grass anymore. But that's in the urban side of things. How do all the water restrictions undermine what you as a rancher need to do to be able to provide good livestock and meat?
Well, for us personally, we own private land, so we don't have to deal with too much of that. I think this is more of a problem in the Central Valley where there's a lot of like big farming industries, and that can be a little bit more of an issue, I would imagine. But for us, like some things that could be like an issue would be, well, for example, we used to have a dairy here, right? We no longer have dairy cattle here because of water restrictions and
Wow.
water issues. And that happened in the late 90s. My grandpa sold all the milk cows because he couldn't keep up with the restrictions that were
Mm.
being handed over to him at the time. So he was innovative and kind of like switched course, and that's when we went more on the beef side of things. But to answer your question, like cattle don't utilize a whole lot of water. I know that's like another misconception that can be thrown around and kind of used loosely. When they're properly managed, like on rangeland and pasture and rotated correctly. And obviously it depends on like rainfall years, like Southern
Hmm.
California, we can have like a 10-inch year, we can have a 40-inch year. It just
Sure.
really depends.
Yep.
So just being like mindful of like our land, because essentially we're also in the pasture and grass business, not only the cattle business.
I'm curious, you just mentioned that your grandfather had to kind of evolutionize the ranch because it didn't work anymore to have the milk cows. So if I think about that, X times across California, because I'm sure he wasn't the only one, where
Mhm.
okay, this is where my mind goes. The logical conclusion then is dairy farmers leave California or they just sell it off because they can't do it anymore. So then we have to import milk then, right? We're not
Right.
exporting anymore. Has there been a shift in that with dairy ranchers leaving California and then us losing export and having to import more?
Yeah, no, for sure, especially in Southern California. And I keep mentioning Southern California because that's where I'm from, where I grew up. But I think right now we only have one pretty functional dairy in San Diego County. When my grandpa was running a dairy down here, I think there was like 12 different dairies.
Wow.
So I know like it was definitely not just him.
It makes you wonder, because
Yeah,
if it's all for like making California a healthy state, then you want to be producing more. So you're exporting more versus regulating more so that you're driving all the export out. And then we just have to import. And then we're spending more money and we're polluting the air more because we're having to import more. But those cow
right.
farts are going to kill us all. Okay.
Yeah.
For my audience who is skeptical of big government, I'm going to ask you a spicy question. I want to
All right.
know how all these regulations, and there are more that we can talk about, seem more about control than actual environmental or public good from the perspective of ranchers in California.
Yeah, so I think on the control side, it is definitely something that we all struggle with within like the ranching and farming space. I mentioned before, like people think that we are like uber rich because we own thousands of acres, but like really that's not the case. Like the margins are really tight. We're like constantly trying to like, evolutionize and try to diversify and figure out like what's the next step and how are we going to keep this in our family for numerous generations to
Hmm.
come.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about the economic and the toll of all of this that we've been talking about, like how these regulations drive up the cost, especially for my audience who is passionate about, MAHA, eating healthy, really being able to access the best meat that's local. Really into regenerative farming, advancing practices when it comes to crop rotation and all of that. How do all these other regulations, right, that aren't really about that kind of innovation how does that drive up the cost in California and the exports outside of California on meat for the consumer?
Yeah, for sure. So, I'll use like our business as an example because I am a small scale producer that sells direct to consumer. I think, what's the hurdle for us is there's not enough USDA facilities for us to process our animals nearby. There used to be like probably 20, 30 years ago, like just down the road or not too far away, but now I have to drive like 6 to 7 hours away to get animals processed for USDA retail cuts, which is like, that adds up with and on cost with fuel and time and transportation. And not only that, but like usually a USDA inspection requires a little bit more cost wise per pound to get your meat cut and wrapped correctly for resale. So there's just a lot of things that go into it, and not to mention just like feed costs too. So that's what kind of drives up prices. And that's why you see a lot of direct to consumer operations, not only just in beef, but in like pork and lamb and chicken and all that kind of stuff is a little bit more expensive because our costs are a lot higher. And then that also leads to why, we have like feedlots and stuff like that. And I know that feedlots can be kind of like a scary term for some people. Some people like equate it to a factory farm, which I've visited. I was just talking to somebody from CCA earlier today about different feedlots and whatnot. And I visited 3 feedlots in my lifetime, and every single feedlot has been really surprisingly impressive.
What is a feedlot for non-ranchers in the audience?
Yes. Okay, I will explain that. So a feedlot, essentially like cattle go through like a life cycle that starts off at the ranch, a cow-calf producer, which is somebody like myself or my dad who raises mama cows. They have babies. When the babies are old enough to be weaned, which is about like 6 months of age or so, we sell them to an auction. From the auction, they get purchased by a backgrounder or a feedlot. So what a backgrounder or a feedlot does is they purchase these animals when they're younger, they're still on pasture or they're still being fed forage, which would be like hay, grasses, different materials like that. And then for the last, like, depending on the breed or the genetics side of things, they are finished with either on just solely grass, which could be hay, like I mentioned before, or they could be finished on a grain diet, which could be like a mixture of corn, oats, barley, spent brewers grains, all kinds of things that cattle can digest. And that usually happens for the last like 180 days or so of their lifetime. So it's a shorter period of time, but they still need to be eating grass of some sort. So anyway, so at a feedlot, that's where they're being finished off the last like couple months of their lifetime. And then from the feedlot, they go to a larger packing plant or a processor, which you would probably know as like one of the big main 4 industries in America. So that's like on a larger, like more commercial scale. But something I want to mention about that is it is needed because there's a lot of there's a lot of ranchers and farmers, for example, my dad, that do not want to sell direct to consumer. And this is the way that they make their paycheck either once or twice a year. And it takes a lot of like the logistics out of it for them, but they still get their paycheck at the end of the day. And right now, cattle producers are doing really, really well. The cattle prices are the highest that it's ever been in history. So that's really good for cattle producers, but it's not good for people in the processing world, like the big 4. Like their margins are a lot smaller now because of that, which, obviously drives prices up too. But what I think is most important is just finding what you value as a consumer, how you want your meat to be raised and brought up, and then kind of make your decisions from there and just kind of build a trust. For example, for us, we do all of our breeding on site. All of our beef is Black Angus beef. We're really passionate about the breed for a lot of different reasons. And they're always on grass for their entire lives, but we do finish them off with spent brewer's grain that we get from a local brewery down in San Diego. I drive down there once a week and pick up a bunch of grain, and it's a great like upcycling kind of situation that we're able to implement on our cattle. And then we'll also work with a local animal nutritionist that formulates a grain diet that's just all it is corn, oats, and barley. And we do that for like the last like maybe 90 days or so. And that just kind of like elevates the marbling, the tenderness, and overall flavor of the beef. It's something that I really enjoy
Hmm.
for my family. And I'm happy to, I want to feed people what I want to eat, So I'm trying to like work more on, and I know that we can talk about direct to consumer stuff in a little bit too, but I want to work on doing some more grass finished stuff too. But again, like with all the climate that we're
Yeah.
in Southern California, it's so hard to like really judge like what's going to be a good rain year or not, and if we're going to have enough grass to finish cattle like that or not. So it's a geographic problem.
One question that I know people are going to want to know about is when it comes to choosing beef, a lot of my audience is passionate about making sure that they're not eating beef that's been injected with the mRNA injection. Like there's no mRNA stuff going on in the beef. So how can consumers really make sure that their beef doesn't have any mRNA stuff in it?
I'm really glad you asked this question. So as of right now, there is zero mRNA vaccines in any livestock in the United States. So if you see
Whoa, okay,
claims,
that's gonna take people by surprise because the narrative has
yes,
been that they are
no,
shooting up our beef with mRNA and we're all eating the mRNA vaccine that we refuse to take. So that's gonna
yeah.
shock people.
So yeah, I know. I have this conversation a lot, so this is something that I'm familiar with. But I mean, it comes down to like fear marketing tactics. It's just an extra label that people want to put on their beef. But yeah, so the FDA and the USDA don't have any approved mRNA vaccines in livestock in the United States as of right now. It is June 2nd, 2025. So
Wow.
that is
You heard it
kind of just
here,
like,
ladies and gentlemen. You have it
yeah,
on good authority that your beef,
y-
if in California, in the United States, if you're eating
yes,
beef that was raised here, it has not been injected with mRNA. Now, what about if
that is
it's
correct.
been like sent out overseas to be, I don't even know, does that work? Do they ever send it out to package it? And, or if
Yeah.
it's bred in the United States and then slaughtered in the United States, does it stay here? Or is there ever an export and then re-import?
We do get imports and we do exports. You can't really inject meat after the fact, like after it's been slaughtered with mRNA injections or anything of that sort. So to answer like, our exports, no, it wouldn't be injected with anything. Anything that's imported in, it's all regulated by the USDA and the FDA. So any beef that comes in here is already inspected and at the USA standards. So anything that you're buying at the grocery store is going to be safe. It's going to be nutritious. It's going to taste good. Again, it kind of depends on like what your personal preference is. If you're a grass finished person, cool, that's going to be nice and healthy for you. If you like a more well marbled steak or something of that kind of nature, then that's also going to be equally as healthy. So I just want people to not be scared to go to the grocery store and like go like deep in the weeds, reading the labels and seeing what's in there, because essentially beef is one ingredient. It's just beef.
Well,
And
I think
so,
that's huge because that when I mentioned to people that I was going to be interviewing someone with the Cattlemen Association in California, they were like, well, ask them about the mRNA vaccine. What's going on with that? Is that in our beef? You know, especially moms super concerned about exposing their kids to that. And I was like, I don't
right.
know. I'll ask. So
Yeah. No,
has
I
there
think
been
it's
any
important.
yeah, it is important. Has there been any talk about forcing cattle ranchers to put that into our cows in California, or is that off the table right now?
I have not heard anything as of right now. I do like another thing I want to mention too, just in general with like injections and stuff like that, is like, for example, like if a cow had to get an antibiotic injection because it was sick or it had pink eye or, whatever the case may be, there is a withdrawal period. And that is also relevant with vaccination protocols as well with cattle ranchers. So I know that there's like some I guess, marketing tactics where a lot of direct to consumer people say, like, my beef or my swine, my whatever has never been injected with any vaccines of whatsoever, which is fine. And that's totally like up to them. It's their business. But at the end of the day, like, our job is to keep these cattle healthy and thriving. And sometimes they may need medication. Sometimes they need a vaccination protocol in order to keep them healthy. A lot of cattle are more prone to upper respiratory diseases and clostridial diseases. So there's some like kind of like core vaccines that calves get when they're younger. But the important thing to remember is there's a withdrawal period, which means from the time they get their injection to the time that they get slaughtered, there has to be a waiting period, and it depends on what the injection is. So, like, for example, there might be like an antibiotic that might need to be given to a calf that's really sick and has pneumonia. So we have to give that calf an injection of whatever antibiotic. And then there's like a 40-day withdrawal period before anything can be done with that calf, processing and slaughter wise. So that means that any that body has metabolized the medication or the antibiotic or the vaccine, whatever it may be, and it's safe to consume even though it had gotten that injection at some point in its life, if that makes sense. But not everybody wants that, and that's totally fine. And there's like for us, we have never actually had to give an antibiotic to one of our feeder steers, which is like our beef steers that we sell direct to consumer. I always tell people if I do have to do it, I will keep it for myself and I will feed my own family with it. And I'm totally fine and happy with that. Like, it's safe. If I feel like it's safe for my family, you're more than welcome to buy a half a share or something. Like, that's usually something that I would do for like a bulk beef program, but I would never ever do that with my USDA retail beef because it just like, it causes a lot of drama and people just don't like the idea of that, which is fine. And I have respect for that, but I just want people to know that they're, it's not going to like really affect you health wise after that, if all things are met in the right kind of like requirements and stuff when it comes to like the withdrawal periods and stuff, if that makes sense.
It's good to know. You mentioned something to my amazing producer, Lindsay, about, what is it, like screw worms in Mexico? Yeah. Did I get the word right? I didn't write it down. Yeah. I was just looking through the notes.
Almost.
But the little worms, there's some worm in Mexico and it's a threat for California ranchers, and you've been watching it. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with the worms in Mexico and how that could impact California ranching.
Yeah, so it's the New World screwworm. It's a larva that actually turns into a fly. And the United States had gotten rid of it completely in I believe in the 60s, and had it pushed all the way down into South Central America. There was a sterile fly program for sterile male flies to like eradicate the problem. But just recently, within like the past like year or so, it kind of blew up down in Central America near Panama, I believe, and had spread, unfortunately. And the last I heard is it's about 700 miles away from the border, more on the Texas side right now. So the U.S. Secretary Sarah Rowlands, I believe, had shut down the border and is trying everything we can to like try to get control of this to not have this problem in the United States.
What's the threat? What is the worm?
So what the worm will do is if there's any sort of open wound on any animal really, but it's just more prevalent in cattle, they can screw into the wound. That's why they call it the screw worm. And it causes a really nasty infection. Yeah, it causes a really nasty infection. And it can cause death and mortality and just culling of cattle in general. What's scary about it is it's zoonotic, which means that it can pass to people. So if you have like a cut on your arm, your kid gets a cut or something like that, it can be a problem. I don't know of any like human cases really, to be honest with you, but it's just like something to kind of keep a pulse on as well. Like my kids, I had like a little scratch on my arm and they put a Band-Aid on me because I told them about the screwworm and they're scared that I'm going to get screwworm. And I'm like, I'm fine. Like we're okay. But it's just something to like be aware of. And that's also something that can affect cattle prices too, because right now, Mexico is actually a big trader for the beef industry right now for the United States. So we're not accepting any beef across the border right now. So because of that, like that kind of fluctuates the prices of beef right now as well. So
how much do you know the percentage of beef that we get in imports from Mexico? Do you have any idea? Is it a large number or?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I do know that a lot of Californian feedlots do take in some Mexican beef. I don't know what the percentage is, but again, like it's all USDA inspected and it's like to our regulations for what we accept.
But right now we're saying no because we're concerned
Right.
about this little nasty screwworm coming over.
Yes.
So we're saying no, we're not going to take any. So we could see beef prices increase because of that.
We could. And I know that they already have a facility being built or being remodeled or something like that to accommodate creating more of these sterile male flies to kind of stop the problem. But, obviously it takes time, it takes money. Who knows? I mean, flies fly, so it can happen, who knows? I don't know, really have like a good projection of like time of like how soon this could happen. But I mean, it's definitely a real threat, and it's just something that we have to be kind of aware of. And if you see beef prices skyrocket because of screwworm, then you kind of have a general idea of like,
well, at least the egg prices
it.
have gone down. So now we can.
Yes, that's true. You can eat some eggs too. Yeah.
Oh no. Are you tired of brands that either sell out or stay silent on what matters? Well, there is one athletic brand that is bold enough to stand for American values, free speech, and biological reality. XXXY Athletics. 79% of Americans agree men don't belong in women's sports. But most brands won't say it. XXXY Athletics isn't just saying it, they are shouting it. And when you wear their premium logo tees, leggings, their moisture wicking tops, their tanks, those tennis dresses that I absolutely love, and their skirts, you're making a powerful statement. You stand with women and girls. Check out their amazing new collab with Riley Gaines, featuring an iconic oversized tee with Title IX's 37 words, a Save Women's Sports hoodie, retro velour track jacket, and matching shorts. They're all amazing. So why settle for low quality gear from brands that betray your values? XXXY Athletics delivers top tier quality without compromise. Every piece is designed to make you look good and feel proud, and you aren't funding the woke giants that are selling women out. Join the movement. Head to thetruthfits.com. Use promo code RootedWings20 for 20% off your order. That's RootedWings20 for 20% off at thetruthfits.com. What's the outlook for California ranching, which is so, so, so important to California? That's why I wanted to do this interview, is for people, listeners, to understand that when we talk about California ranchers, it's not just this like disconnected romantic ideal. It is a huge sustaining force of California and what California has been since the 1700s and before that. So what's the outlook here if the regulations keep tightening? And what about decentralized models like yours that's direct to consumer? Can that really save, in a sense, the industry by evolving in a way that hedges against just all these regulations and the obsession with California ranchers by the men and women in shiny suits?
The California landscape is so beautiful, it's so rich, and it's so diverse that it's really like truly a wonderful place to ranch. But like when it comes to policy and regulation wise, like our hands are tied with a lot of different things. So being able to like diversify and like come up with like new innovative ideas and collaborate even with other industries to create like a long-term successful plan is something that I think is really important. For example, like, yeah, we do direct to consumer beef here. We also do ranch to table dinners, and I love doing those on the ranch because it creates like a community of people that can come and see exactly what we do as producers, and they can ask us these questions that you're asking like face to face and really see it like in person. Like some of these people have never touched grass in like months. So
that's the saddest thing. I run into a lot of those online where I'm like, just please go in the sunshine and touch some grass or some sand.
Exactly.
Just you need to log off for a minute.
I know people need to like experience nature, and that's like what we're here to do. We're here to preserve nature. We're here to preserve the land. And without us, like who knows what can happen? It can get developed, or God knows what could be the case. So I think just like being able to diversify and just kind of like look at different options. For example, we on our ranch, we're working with RCD, which is a non-regulatory program in San Diego County that really kind of advocates for different like regenerative practices and different ways of like kind of keeping like ecosystems thriving and things like that. And so what we're trying to do is implement like a rotational grazing program on the property with a grant that the RCD had gotten. And basically with that, they are going to do like different events and stuff to bring in like policymakers and other ranchers to learn more about like different ways of how to utilize the land in the best way possible and also elevate your business. So like working with agencies like that, like it could be a little scary for ranchers because like they kind of, get, again, they don't want to like get involved and get confrontational, but if you can open up a good conversation with some of these people that might not really be like on base with like your beliefs, it might have like a positive effect in the long term to be able to like have conversations together and see like what the concerns are on that side versus what our concerns are, and then kind of like coming to common ground.
Hmm.
So I think just kind of working together on some of that stuff. I know it's like easy to fight back and get angry and get frustrated, but I think sometimes you kind of have to like take a step back and look at the bigger picture of like what we're really trying to do, because really we all want the same thing. We all want like beautiful land. We all love California. That's why we're here, despite all the crazy that's going on here.
Yeah.
But I think California is worth fighting for. And I think that's part of it, is just kind of like, opening up your like blinders a little bit more.
We've kind of lost the common ground over the last few years. So I like that. You mentioned the ranch to table, which I want to know more about, and then how people can find you, find what you're doing if they want to buy like a half cow, or I have listeners all over California and outside of California too. So I guess first, how can people find what you're doing? And that ranch to table thing I want to come to, because that sounds so fun.
It is so fun.
And then we'll talk about like how people who can't access your beef can find kind of what you guys are producing on wherever they are.
Yeah, for sure. So I always direct people to our website. It's flyingfranch.org. And from there, you can drop your email in the subscription box. And I try to send out emails like once weekly, whether it's like a ranch update, a funny story, recipes, things going on, sales that we might be having with beef, where to find our beef, all that kind of good stuff. So, and then as far as like the ranch to table dinners, we started doing that last year in October. And it's just been a really fun experience. Like the whole idea behind it was to integrate local agriculture and then also bringing in our consumers from San Diego that, again, haven't seen or touched grass or dirt in like months. So I like to keep it pretty intimate. I don't like it to be huge. So I usually try to limit it to like 40 to 50 people. And I bring in a local brewery or a local winery or distillery, something like that, to showcase what their products are. And then we match it with a 5-course beef meal.
Yum.
That
sounds
we work
so
with.
good.
It's so fun. But we did it with, so the first one we did was with Viewpoint Brewing Company, which is the same brewery that I get all my spent brewers grains from. And they're in Del Mar. So they came up, they did their beer and paired our beef with the beer, and it was amazing. It was so fun. But it was freezing cold because it was in October, and it was like literally the one day of that week that was like actually cold. So we had to
I'm like October's usually, I always for Halloween, everyone sells like the warm, trick or treat costumes. We're in California, like it's gonna be blazing hot in October.
I know. Good old California. It's like a little unpredictable with weather sometimes. But we ended up making like a bonfire, and like a lot of the steaks were being cooked on a Santa Maria grill. So people were like kind of like hovering around the grill and like watching the chefs do their thing and all that. And then I just like brought in table rentals, and it was almost like a little mini wedding or something like that.
That is so fun.
It was so fun. And then our second one we did was in August last year. And that one was really fun. We did it with a winery that's a couple close friends of ours in Ramona. And again, we did it with a different chef that time and just kind of integrated local ingredients. We used a local farm to get all the produce and things like that. And same kind of concept. But I want to do more of those. But unfortunately, like I can't do it year round just because like the weather is so weird up here, because I'm also near Julian area. So I'm trying to do it more like in the summer, fall kind of season. I'm having a baby in like a month, so I'm not going to even
congratulations.
Focus. Thank you. But I'm not even going to focus on ranch to table stuff until like after that's all done.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to have
you never know though, nesting starts to hit. You're going to be like, okay, let's plan a big event.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's my third kid, so whatever. It's all good. What's throwing a big event? I'm hoping September, October would be the next one. And then I want to do like maybe like a couple a year, but it's just like a little fun thing.
This is so beautiful because you have animals grazing and you have acres, and we don't have a whole lot of that left. That's why I'm so passionate about let's preserve this and support what you guys are doing. But I love that you bring people in to see what it used to be, like that is what we used to do back in the day. And you're recreating that, which is so cool. Not everyone's going to, talk how people can find your meat, because that's important.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's
I
important
got
too.
lost in this ranch to table where I'm like, okay, I'm signing up, but I want to know how people can get your meat too.
I got lost too, so it's all good. So people can order our meat online. We're actually restocking in the next like couple weeks. I just took up 3 beef to our USDA processor, so we'll have retail USDA beef very soon. People can order online. I usually do beef bundles, which is like a collaboration of different cuts that you can utilize at home. And then once this baby's out, I'll go to the Rancho Santa Fe Farmers Market on Sundays from 9:30 to 2 o'clock. And obviously, it's in San Diego. Unfortunately, I don't ship beef because, again, we're kind of small scale. I'm not really to that level. And also, we have so many amazing San Diego locals that can support us. And that's really like a big like value to us.
I would say for my listeners in California, we're very lucky in the sense that we have access to great meat that is ranched in the traditional sense of ranching, that we can access. How do people find, like, what's the best way for someone who's listening and they're like, oh, I want to learn more about where I can locally access meat like what Allison's talking about, but I'm not down in San Diego. I'm not going to be able to go to that farmer's market. How would people be able to find what's close to them?
I know that the California Beef Council, I think they have a whole list of different producers that do direct to consumer marketing. So that's a good place to check out. Otherwise, like, I mean, I know in Northern California, there's a couple ranches up there that do it, central, like all over the place, really. I'm sure if you just Google, you can find ranches in California that do direct to consumer. But if you want like a list of producers that are on the California Beef Council, that's a good resource. And then I do want to give a shout out now that you said California Cattlemen's, they do so much work for us as producers, like policy wise and fighting for us. And for those of us that don't really want to speak up but need to speak up, they do a lot of background work and fighting and advocating for the industry. So the California Cattlemen's Association is like essential for us cattle producers, and that not only them but also like the Farm Bureau as well. So anyway, but yeah, find your meat. I'm sure you can Google it or check out California Beef Council.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'll have all of that in the show notes for all the listeners who do want to jump on that, because I think that this is a great way. You know, we talk a lot about make America healthy again, but make our families healthy again and support our local farmers and ranchers who have been doing this traditionally for a really long time and really like have a legacy of that. I think it's such a cool opportunity to, maybe this is the year for families to innovate, to think beyond what has kind of become normal, where you just go to a grocery store and pick up meat, where instead you can really get intentional about what you're feeding your family and find those ranchers who are striving to make the healthiest meat available. And then you're supporting local ranchers, you know, amidst, it's a way to hedge against all the overreach, I think too, you know, is to support the local guys who are really trying to do the right thing out here in California, which is very hard to keep sustainable. I just loved this conversation. Is there anything that you want to add that you feel like this audience should know about with freedom for ranchers, the intentionality of ranching in California? Anything that you just think, oh, there's that one more thing that I want to add?
The only thing I want to add, just because you said it, is I think it's amazing that people can support ranches like myself that can produce beef direct to consumer. But I do know that it doesn't really price out well for a lot of people's budgets, which is okay and totally fine. But like, for example, I just bought beef at Costco last week and I have beef in my freezer, but there was a great sale on it. So I wanted to purchase that for my own family. But I just want people to know that all US beef is safe beef. Don't be scared to buy beef at the grocery store, whether it's at Walmart or Costco or wherever you get your beef products. Because I want to also like support like a single mom who can't afford my like $50 steak. You know what I mean? I want them to be able to buy beef confidently and be totally, you know, have no reservations about it at all. So I don't want to ever discount anything that like a larger facility does for us, because they do a lot for our nation too. So and again, like a lot of that, all that beef that's coming from these like big retail stores like Costco or Walmart is raised by people like us. It's just like it goes through a little bit more hands than it does with mine. So I just want to support, just eat beef. Yeah, eat beef and you're good. Everything in the United States is safe and healthy. So don't be scared.
It's
or
so
reach out to
good.
me if you have questions.
And I know we've said it a couple times, and I'll have it in the show notes. So head to the show notes after this interview. But how can people find your specific ranch and what you guys are doing? And maybe they do want to go to that ranch to table night too.
Yeah. Again, our website's flyingfranch.org. That's where I keep everything pretty up to date on there. And then if you want to follow along on social media and stuff, my husband and I make like silly little videos on Instagram and TikTok and all that kind of stuff.
You
But
guys
it's
are
just
very
Flying F
cute.
Ranch.
Yeah, it's
I
very
know
cute.
people laugh at us, but we have fun. But also I like to like advocate for the industry in general on Instagram. So I try to keep up to date on like things that are going on like nationally or within the state of California. So, but obviously like we have little goofy videos on there too. So it's a little bit of everything, some entertainment and some education too.
It's great. That's the only way really. You have to spoon feed the potatoes in with all the sweet stuff too. So it works.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
This was such a solid conversation, and I'm so thankful for what you're doing just for California. The biggest takeaway for me is the mRNA issue, because I know that that's going to be like a whoa for the audience. So
Yeah.
please share this episode, and then go follow Flying F Ranch and the California Cattlemen Association. We're so thankful they helped set up this interview. So follow them and
Yes.
everything they're doing too. It's so important that we know the pulse of our ranchers in California and support the local ranchers who are really trying to do the right thing for our families. This nation was built on farmers and ranchers, and so it's very important that we really continue to support them, especially against the overreach of government, which will be our downfall. So thank you again, Allison, so much for joining us, and head to the show notes for all the information.